my channel. I am Jake Berlin, aka the Whiskey Jedi, and this is this week's show. Thank you so much for joining me. We are here today to continue my Mandalorian rewatch as I prepare for season 2, and more so than the past couple weeks, it is definitely preparation time as we got our first official look at the trailer for season 2, which was great, killer, amazing, so much goodness inside that trailer. And I'm not going to dive into my thoughts on that because I've talked about it at length this week on some other shows that I am included on, mainly being Apocalypse movies. We did a reaction, and then we took an entire episode on Tuesday's Apocalypse Now to discuss that trailer. But I'll just tell you that it is absolutely brilliant. Yeah, so today we're gonna be watching episode 4, Sanctuary, for season 1. Super excited to see this episode. I know that this episode for a lot is kind of on the weaker end. For myself, I quite enjoy it. I was very surprised by it as well, and so I'm excited to discuss it a little bit and get into that, as well as try for the very first time Clyde May's Bourbon. I have never had Clyde May's before. And it was gifted to me just a number of weeks ago from one of my best friends growing up. She brought it home as a housewarming gift for me, which was very nice. And I'll go ahead and pull the. I already poured a glass for myself. I don't know, for those of you who don't watch any of my shows, I broke my hand a number of weeks ago, so I got to prepare myself and make sure it goes as smoothly as possible. But a very cool bottle, very old school, very nostalgic to old school whiskey. It has that classic look to it, a lot of writing on it, the imprints behind the actual wording and stuff like that. Just has a very 1920s vibe to it, which is really cool. And 1920s, 1930s, around there. And, the company has been making whiskey since 1946. So it's a long it's a bourbon that's been around for a while. Excuse me. That's what I was trying to say. Clyde May's is a company that they're known for making Alabama style whiskey. The funny thing is that it's distilled in Kentucky, where most bourbon is. And so cool little factoid there. But and I'll get into some other facts as well down the road as I'm watching this episode, as well as tasting and stuff like that. I can tell you right off the bat, I'll get into the flavor as far as smell. When I opened it for the very first time just about 15 minutes ago, very fruity, and very sweet sensation that kind of comes through when you open the top on this bottle. I'm not surprised because Alabama style whiskey is known for using apples in their barrels, and so I'm definitely not surprised, not shocked. I'm definitely interested in seeing how different the taste is compared to the smell, and I'm very excited to see what it smells like or tastes like. Excuse me. And like I said, I'll get into some other facts about the whiskey towards the middle of the episode. The way it's been working recently with my Mando watches is that I watch about the first half or so of the episode, and then I'll actually pause it, and then I'll get into some details about it. I've done essentially thirds of an episode before, and I may take that time. But with it being a brand new bottle that I've never opened before, you may in fact definitely see me stop twice in the episode to kind of talk about it throughout the episode. So before we get to that, I saw that we have one comment here from Brandy, and Brandy's been following me on some other shows that I've been doing, which is great. Thank you so much for stopping by, Brandy. Before the pandemic, I was doing whiskey takings monthly out of my condo. Clyde Mays was one of the 4 of January and was enjoyable. Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. Doing tastings out of your condo. That's pretty cool. I'm not doing tastings, but I'm doing a lot of tastings on my own. I've definitely received and been given and come up on a lot of whiskey bottles in the last number of months. I have a 3-layer shelf sitting outside my door here that has all my whiskey on, and I actually tried to find room for it to come out here in the background, but it just didn't fit properly. I'm going to be shifting things around here pretty soon, and so maybe it'll fit then. But yeah, I've definitely gotten a lot of bottles recently, especially getting a new place. And people finding out that I like whiskey. It's the perfect housewarming gift. So, like I said, Clyde Mays was one of those. I'm going to try it here before we start the episode. Again, I'm on Disney Plus watching Mando episode 4. I'm currently at the 0 mark, black screen, and I'll start the episode right after I give it a taste. Very cool coloring as well. Lighter coloring, beautiful, beautiful color. And I got my Vader glass today. Just chose one off the shelf. Worked perfectly for today. Yeah, the taste is definitely similar to what I was smelling earlier. I'm interested to see how I feel after it sits with me. After it kind of goes down a little bit, whether it lingers or not. That's kind of like what you get with whiskeys, right? How you feel about a whiskey is how long it lingers. What does the initial taste like compared to what it actually goes down like? And that's why I love talking about this stuff so much because it's so different. So, yeah, that's wow. That is not what I was expecting, but it's pretty good. It's actually a little bit on the lighter side too, which I like. Oh, another comment here from Brandy. Thank you, Brandy. I had a whole year a long plan of tastings with about 20 people, and I'm so sad it died. I need to build up on my collection again. Yeah. Every time I have people come over here, and not a lot, obviously, in the last couple of months, they always like marvel at the collection I have. And maybe I'll take a picture and post it on social media one day. But I literally have probably, I want to say around 15 bottles. And I'm slimming down on some of them, unfortunately, which means I'm going to have to buy some. And I'm running out of options for the show as well, which means I'm going to have to buy some. But that's not something that I don't like. I enjoy it. I have a whiskey multiple times a week, and if I drink it, I'm going to buy them. And so, yeah, but for today, Clyde May's definitely not what I was expecting when I saw the bottle for the first time, being that it's very much based on like the Prohibition style era. But I quite enjoy it. So I will get to a little bit of that later. As for now, Mando, episode 4, Sanctuary. Let's go ahead and get to this bad boy again. 000 mark, black screen. A lot of cool things in this episode. I'll go and throw some images up before we start because it is a little bit of a longer episode. Very, very cool stuff here. There's the title card, Sanctuary. One of the few episodes that doesn't have the word "the" in it, which is kind of cool. We get one of these cool moments in the episode. The diner scene, if you will, with Baby Yo and Mando, and of course the sipping cup, Baby Yoda. We get to meet Cara Dune in this episode, which is really cool. First time we see Gina Carano take on the character. And then, of course, the Widow. The Widow could end up playing a big factor into this show down the road. We only got to see her once in season 1. But being that she was the one to get closest to Mando, what does that mean going forward? And obviously, I want to make sure I mention, but Bryce Dallas Howard stepping in and directing this episode. I was very impressed with what she did with this episode and excited to see what she comes up with in season 2. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into this bad boy. Episode 4, Sanctuary. I'm going to click play in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, Disney Plus logo popping up. Now we got previously on Mandalorian. Love that title logo as well. Yeah, thank you to everyone who's watching live or on the replay. I appreciate it. Definitely, if you have not joined me before, as this kind of previously on happens, this isn't a show I'm looking to take worldwide, if you will. I just love talking Star Wars and I love talking whiskey. It's something for me to jump on once a week and just talk for about 30 minutes to an hour. And I've definitely enjoyed it so far. It's been 12 episodes, and I've really liked what we've been doing so far, or what I've been doing, excuse me, on this show. And so if you've tuned in multiple times or for the first time, definitely appreciate it. We'd love to have you guys back. And you are more than welcome to ask questions about anything in the chat as this episode goes on. I'll kind of be talking over the episode most of the time about what I'm seeing, and maybe even how it ties into what we've seen for season 2. So stay tuned as the episode starts to begin. And we have that awesome Lucasfilm and Star Wars title pop up with the multiple characters scrolling through. Just started right here. Such a great little addition for Disney Plus too, for the original Star Wars stuff that comes on this service. Hopefully I'm probably going to have to pour another glass at some point or a little more, and I'm going to probably struggle with my hand. So stay tuned. I've always wondered what these were, by the way. Like, are these space shrimp, space crawdads? Like, what are they? They're so colorful looking too. I would probably lean more towards crawdads, the way that they're. Look at the color on these things, but the way that they're fishing them. I don't know if that is the word they use in Star Wars. I'm not sure, but the way that they're fishing them is very similar to how they do crawdads. That's the cool thing about Mando that we noticed or that I noticed in season 1 anyway, is the use of creatures, the new creatures we got to see in multiple episodes. A lot of lizards and, fish here, obviously being that type of episode. A frog, space frog. And then one of the bigger shockers in the episode of the season, obviously, is the bringing back of the ATST. Because when we're watching this for the first time, and we don't actually see it until the end, or towards the end a little bit, you hear that classic blaster fire that is very reminiscent of the Empire stuff, right? AT-AT, ATST, or whatever. But you're thinking to yourself, well, this is 5 years after. We don't know this planet. How could that be? And then we see these invaders come in, and we're like, okay, that wouldn't make sense for them to have it. But then again, towards the end, we obviously know what happens. Again, with the creatures, as far as aliens go in Star Wars, a very cool breed, very dog-like, obviously. These kind of just rambunctious, aggressive invaders take what they want until later on they run into some trouble. Very cool looking. Very cool looking. I love that the main one has a shotgun in his hand, or space shotgun, if you will. And again, I know that a lot of people, for some reason, don't agree with this episode as just involved in what has been going on in this season so far. But I really enjoyed it for a lot of reasons. I know that the idea of it being a one-off, if you will, kind of not along with the main story, and I get that, but there's a lot of things that happen in the episode that kind of come back in multiple ways and have a lot of meaning. Obviously, the biggest one is the widow, right? What does she have? What is her role in the future of this show? And then we get to this incredible moment from Baby Yoda and Mando, the child, Tiny. I'm going to call him Tiny most of the time. This is not Yoda. Pressing buttons as a kid would. And it's funny because, like I've mentioned throughout the first couple episodes, I haven't. The way he's looking at Mando and pressing the button, I haven't seen any of these since I watched them the first time a year ago. So I'm getting to re-experience all of this for the first time, and I have to remember that this is the really the first time that Mando is like that dad figure for Tiny. He had just taken him from the client and everything on oh god, why am I forgetting the name of the planet? I'll pull it in a second. Navarro. On Navarro. And so for the first time, we see this tag team style with Mando and Tiny. And it's already a different relationship between both sides, between Tiny and Mando. Cinematography off the charts. One of the shots here going over the glades that was in the trailer, showcased in the trailer. For the first time in the episodes, seeing a lot of green, right? Don't get a lot of green in the first couple episodes. Obviously, we were on a planet that was all sand or dirt in the first episode, and then kind of continued in episode 2, and then we get back to Navarro, the lava planet, in episode 3. I love that he thinks, and it's clear because he doesn't know anything about Tiny, what he is, who he is, all that stuff. And side note, look how incredible that puppet looks. Just bonkers good. But he just thinks that he's going to stay there. Like, if you know anything about kids, you know that they're not going to listen to stuff like that. They're going to move. Like, have you guys seen the challenge of the parents? The fact that he's just standing there already. The challenge of the parents leaving like treats in front of their kids and telling them, don't touch it till I get back. 95% of the time, the kids don't listen. Same thing with the dogs, obviously. And I'm not comparing anything to dogs, but and then Baby Yoda, or Tiny, excuse me, walking. So adorable. So adorable. Good to see this planet's market / bar / diner. Food's probably bonkers good there. Cool Easter egg. Obviously, the Lothal cat popping in here in live action, which is so cool. It hasn't shown up yet, just in case you're wondering why I'm talking about it early. That's just because I literally just remembered. There it is, the Lothal cat. Look how cool that thing looks. Again, going back to the creatures and pulling from past stuff. And there she is, Cara Dune, ex-shock trooper. Probably very suspicious of Mando for good reasons. Now she's gone. And he just leaves Tiny there. Leading to one of the great moments here. And this was highlighted in the concept art towards the end of the episode, too. Get another cool look at some of Mando's tech. Heat signature footprints. Again, the practical effects here. And I know they built just part of it, and then the background with the volume is set. But it just looks so incredible. Here she comes. About to kick some ass. She's just a brooding force. The fact that she's punching Beskar without any feeling, just walloping him. Flamethrower time. No bueno. I mean, as far as a hand-to-hand goes, she definitely beat him. And now leading to one of the greatest moments in the whole season, leading to so many people buying the pop figure, Baby Yoda and the sippy cup. I know multiple people on my end have already bought the pop figure. Early retirement meaning that she bounced AWOL. We get some good backstory on Cara Dune, learning who she is, what she did. Ex-shock trooper, cleaning up ex-warlords, as she said. And that's what they did after the Empire fell, after Return of the Jedi, right? That's kind of what they were sent to do on the low. And then when it was all done, or so they thought, they became quote-unquote peacekeepers, bodyguards, as another word. And clearly Cara Dune did not enjoy that. She and she didn't say it flat out, but she seems to have gone AWOL and is hiding out on a distant planet where no one can find her. And that's why she's so hesitant of Mando, because what do Mandalorians mostly do, or just in general, bounty hunters, right? Maybe she thinks that the New Republic or someone in the New Republic had hired him to hunt her down. I can see why some people may not agree with the episode. I can definitely see it. But for me, and I've said this multiple times on all of my podcasts, I very much look at the technical side of it all as well as the filmmaking side of it all. Obviously, story and action and all of that stuff plays into how I view something. But when it comes to TV, a lot of the times with my popular shows, and I look at the names that are directing episodes, and especially this specific episode being that Bryce Dallas Howard had never directed before. She really did some great stuff in this episode. She really did some great stuff. Not only is it really a beautiful looking episode, as I mentioned, a lot of the green, right? First time we're seeing it in the season. But there's a lot of character development happening in this episode. Obviously, I already mentioned Cara Dune. We just met her, and we already learned so much about her, enough to be like, okay, we're on board, or no, we're not on board, which I very much am on board. And here we go, Mando and Cara Dune about to team up a little bit. But also, I know I mentioned I'm going to again, but the stuff with Mando and the Widow, we learn things about him throughout this episode that are very important going forward, and not just this season, but also the entire show. Who he's going to be, who he wants to be, background, his intentions. A very, very good looking shot as well as of Tiny looking up at the stars. Now we see them arriving at the village with Tiny looking over the edge. Also, another thing that comes back in this episode, and I'm talking about development and almost evolution, if you will. Mando, Din, I don't call him Din very much. It's just much easy. It's much easier to call him Mando. It's also just a cooler name. Mando, throughout the episode, has the realization that Tiny needs to be given the chance to be a kid. He needs to be allowed to grow like any other kid would, and you see that in multiple shots in this. And that's why I think Bryce Dallas Howard was perfect for this episode. I don't see Deborah Chow directing this type of episode. I could see a Dave Filoni. I don't see, a Taika or maybe a Rick Famuyiwa. They're all very good at action and kind of the bigger stuff, right? But Bryce Dallas Howard is so good at these smaller moments and capturing these much more intimate, emotional scenes between all of these characters that have a lot of meaning. And that's why I said earlier, that's why I was so impressed with her after watching this episode. There's a lot to take from this episode. There is really a lot to take from this episode. It's so funny. I see this shot of the water pond, right? The first thing that came to my mind when I first watched is solar panels? Solar panels? And then I realized, no, they were fishing, obviously. I'll stop here in about within 5 minutes to discuss this whiskey here. Clyde May's. God, I don't know. I would love to see this puppet in real life, because I'm blown away through the screen and then making it look this way through the screen. But my goodness. And more so than ever in this episode specifically, because I think most of the time it definitely feels like the puppet is in the forefront rather than something else. Because there's not and this isn't a bad thing to say about the episode, but as I mentioned, it's much more of an intimate, emotional episode. So there's not a lot for Tiny to do throughout the episode as far as action. The Widow she's such an interesting character. First of all, she's played by an incredible actress, and I need to make sure I get her name right. Let me see. Oh, excuse me. Her name is O'Mara, by the way, which I did not know. So O'Mara is played by Julia Jones, and she is remarkable in everything she does. She was also in a movie called Wind River, which dealt with the Indian reservation. Jeremy Renner and Elizabeth Olsen starred in there. And then we get this revelation, obviously, that Mando hasn't taken off his helmet since he was a kid. And then we get another realization that the Mandalorians took him in, so he's not technically a Mando, right? He's not technically one of them. But then we later on learn that that it's much more of a way, aka this is the way, than it is a people. It's not just a people. It's kind of a way of life, if you will. Hey, Ferris, thanks for joining, man. Yes, beautiful puppet. Yes, and you are correct. This is the Village episode, episode 4, Sanctuary. And here's the scene. He takes off his helmet, but we don't see his face, and he's eaten. And so we do actually see him take his helmet off before we see his face later on in the season. First episode, as I mentioned, when we get to see Cara Dune, we meet O'Mara, which I'm very happy they gave her a name because I know she was called the Widow for the longest time. And the first clue to the attack in the opening scene being something that we may recognize from Star Wars Pass, aka an AT-AT, AT-ST, and then we get this footprint here, clearly pointing to be like, there we go. Cara Dune says it, AT-ST. And Cara Dune obviously being a little nervous, being that she's an ex-Republic shock trooper. I love that, Mando. Bad news. You can't live here anymore. Like they're just going to pick up and leave. Yes. Yes, sir. Adopted Mandalorians, younglings. Yes, you are correct. Foundlings, actually, technically, foundlings. Younglings are for the Jedi. But very much the same thing. Which I'm excited to see that play out in this new season because I have no doubt that it will be. I'll go ahead and pause it right after this scene here and talk a little bit more about Clyde Mays. I was also very impressed with Cara Dune in this episode. Gina Carano, excuse me. And I'll go ahead and pause it right there. So I'm currently looking at a shot of a sky, and I'm paused at 2020 is where I'm paused. 2020. Come on, Ferris. Come on. All right, so Clyde Mays. Let me go and pull up some notes here I have just to talk because I want to make sure I get it all correct for you. And this is one thing I wanted to actually mention. I had mentioned earlier about how Clyde Mays is very much like playing off of the nostalgia of whiskey back in the Prohibition era, even though it wasn't created until 1946. Their motto is one of the cooler, if not the coolest motto I've actually heard for a whiskey bottle. And it's better to break the law than to actually to cut corners, excuse me. So it's better to break the law or a law than to cut corners, which obviously calls back to the Prohibition era and the Prohibition time being that, you know, there are these speakeasies giving alcohol to people when they're not supposed to because it was banned, prohibited, if you will, aka Prohibition. So they picked up that motto and they used it a number of years later, which is really, really cool. And so I mentioned the Alabama style whiskey, and I had mentioned apples, but specifically green apples in the barrel, which is very interesting. Let's see. And I mentioned the nostalgia aspect of the bottle here, with the writing and the background stamps going on. And I had also mentioned that the fact that it's an Alabama style whiskey, but it's actually distilled in Kentucky, which is where most whiskeys these days are. So it definitely makes sense. And as far as taste goes, I had mentioned the smell up the bat when I opened the bottle. Very fruity, right? Kind of a fruity, flavorful smell, and you get that from the apples. But as far as the taste, and I mentioned this, but it goes down really smooth. I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting, for lack of a better term, a proofier, and I know that's very much a whiskey term, an alcoholic term, going back to the proof of the bottle, right? The proof of the alcohol, a proofier taste, something that has a little bit of a kick to it, but it really does go down extremely smooth. It still very much has that fruity flavor to it. If I'm gonna give like an example of how it kind of goes down when I taste it as like a small, medium, or large flavor, it's very much like a medium-ish flavor. It doesn't hit you enough to be like, whoa, like that's a whiskey. You can still taste the taste and not just the whiskey. And like I mentioned multiple times, because I'm pretty shocked by it, it goes down very smooth. But once you kind of swallow it and you get it, and it's kind of sitting in your stomach, it lingers there for a little bit. It kind of hits you after a while. It stays there, and then you kind of get this little bit of a spicier flavor to it. This meaning that I think it's supposed to have, which I've talked about it on past episodes. I think the last one I talked about it with was the Burning Chair, which is a local whiskey for me here in California. It's out of Napa. It had been made with out of 3 different bourbons, and it was actually distilled and put into wine barrels for 4 years. That one lingered for a very, very long time, and it kicked you more so than you did drinking it afterwards. This one doesn't have that much. And when I mentioned kick, I'm not saying like it kind of comes back up, but it has a little bit of that bourbon spice to it that comes back up after you already done tasting it. It sits there, like right now I'm starting to feel it. I took a sip like a minute or two ago, and I'm kind of starting to feel it a little bit. But again, that doesn't affect my taste or the smoothness of it. It's a very clean and crisp flavor. And it's interesting, when I was doing my research, I actually came across people saying that it tasted a little bit like peach cobbler. And I know for myself, I'm not a big pie cobbler person, especially when it comes to stuff like peaches. So I don't know what that tastes like personally, which is why I can't say. But a lot of people I saw online were saying that it kind of has that cobbler sensation to it, which is very interesting for a bottle, especially a bourbon. You expect that from some other types of whiskeys, maybe even flavored whiskeys, but not a straight bourbon that is kind of hinting back at this Prohibition style of era, which is really, really cool. So, and they actually mentioned here in a couple of places that I did some research, Clyde May prefers that you drink it straight, just straight out of the bottle, or to kind of, and I want to make sure I get this right here. A few drops of water brings out the sweeter flavor as well as stymies the burn. And so if you actually give the whiskey a little bit of water with the whiskey as you're drinking, just a little bit, not a tiny bit, like maybe like just an ice cube. You throw an ice cube in there, like a nice whiskey ice cube, you let it melt a little bit. It actually gets sweeter as it goes. I don't have one in today because I typically don't like my whiskey melted down with ice cubes. Otherwise, I have to drink it really fast, and sometimes that doesn't happen very well or go very well. So I drink it straight most of the time on the show. But I'm interested to try it with the water. And so I'm definitely excited. Ferris, I did not yet. I'm going to be getting here in about 30 seconds after I'm done talking about this whiskey. And so Clyde May's, it's Alabama style. It's from Kentucky, technically. And from what I've heard, it's very, very popular. As I mentioned, the bottle, and you can see it right there on the other side of me, right here on the left-hand side of the screen. Beautiful, old school type of bottle, right? As I mentioned, it has these prints behind the labels. There's a lot going on, but that's old school. That is very much old school, and that's supposed to be Mr. Clyde himself too. And so, yeah, I definitely recommend straight bourbon whiskey. This doesn't have the punch you would expect from a bourbon, but it's something I would definitely recommend because for people who don't drink whiskey often like I do, it might be the best option because it doesn't give you that normal kick you expect from a bourbon or a whiskey. Very smooth, a little sweeter, but it's a fruity flavor, which might get people on board. So I definitely recommend Clyde May's straight bourbon whiskey. Yeah, and go back to the beginning of the episode as well if you missed it. I did a little bit more on it. I'll do a little bit at the end, but let's go ahead and resume Mando. Again, I'm on episode 4, Sanctuary. I'm currently paused at 2020. I'll do a 5 count for everybody who's watching, and we'll resume in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So I'm currently, now it's panning down from a shot at the sky to Mando and Cara Dune teaching the villagers how to fight. Ooh, Brandy, I'll put it on my list. I will definitely put it on my list. Michter's Tenure, I will put that one on my list. I've been looking for more whiskeys to try, and I'm glad that somebody was willing to share some with me. A lot of my friends who hang out and watch the episode, and even the Shmodown people like Ferris and Brandy, like you guys are both watching, they're getting the experience of this for the first time. And so I don't get very many recommendations on a whiskey. I get it from other people. And so thank you for that. I'll definitely put that one up on my list. And like I said earlier, I'm running out of whiskeys to try because I've done 12 episodes and I have around 15 bottles. So I'm getting down to the wire here. And of course, Omera knows how to shoot a gun here, shoot a blaster. And we're about to see her wreck shop up against some dummies. Again, I go back to it, but I know a lot of people for some reason don't like this episode, but it's so simple and fun and different, and it shows the different sides of Mando. We get to see Cara in her really her element, being a soldier. And I always enjoy, and I just watched it in a movie like Mulan, but I always enjoy people learning to fight. And this episode does that for these villagers, right? Over time, they get better and better and better. Outside of Omera, who just absolutely wrecks shop up against these pans. Which is probably part of the reason why Amanda's so attracted to her. Beautiful shot of the village as well. I keep going back to a lot of the cinematography in the show. That's because, again, I'm all about technical aspects. Send them my way, Brandy. I'm not a book guy. I'll tell you that much. Not a book guy. I audio book all the Star Wars stuff, but whiskeys, just send them my way. I'm happy to take them. And a cool little action scene coming up here. It's obviously the thumbnail in the video. I want that drink in Galaxy's Edge. Can someone make that drink, that glowy blue drink? I want to know what that was. We don't need all these milks. Give me something cool. Maybe with a little alcohol in it. Make it whiskey. There you go. I'm still surprised at the less of a burn that this has going down. It's funny too, because I had mentioned earlier when Cara and Mando fought, how just like how she punches and fights. Even in this scene, they give the two different sound effects when they punch, and Cara's has much more a thud sensation to it. And it just goes to show how powerful she is. She's a badass. She's a total badass. And it's perfect to have Gina Carano play her. Like, perfect to have Gina Carano play her. You know, obviously coming from a wrestling / UFC background. And I haven't mentioned this episode yet, but Ludwig Göransson absolutely murdering this score right now. So good. And there it is, the ATST. Such a great looking ATST in TV too, right? We have to keep remembering that this is all for the first time Star Wars television live action. And look how great it looks. battle worn, some rust, some black streaks going on. Obviously not being used by the Empire anymore. This music is so on point. I forgot how good this is. I'm going to have to download this track. I don't think I have this one. Very, very kind of sort of Blade Runner-esque, right? A little bit, tiny bit. Maybe even a little bit of a Tron in there. I know I'm missing one that, and I can't pinpoint it right now. And I love that they gave this this fight sequence, or this battle, I should say, at night. They put it at night. It adds so much to the setting and look of it all because of the blasters and them coming out of the fog. The obvious the eyes of the ATST. So good. That shot of the ATST looking down at the villagers. It's, if you Google it somewhere, because when they were doing the episodes, episode by episode, excuse me, they had revealed like exclusive posters before each episode, and that was a poster, and it was incredibly good looking. Again, the night aspect, all of it was just beautiful to look at. And here we go. Clatoonians, I think it might be their name. The dog. I'm gonna say the dogs. I'm just gonna call them the dogs because it's easier. The dogs come in attacking, and there we go. We get to see the disintegration rifle again. So awesome. Kara asking for the pulse rifle. Mando trusting her. That's, again, going back to the character development. That's a big thing happening. And now Kara, being smart enough as she is, the soldier, the leader, realizing that she got enough underneath the ATST to attract him towards the edge of the cliff here. Not yet in the water. Still getting there. And Mando just doing what he does best and shooting guys down. It's awesome to see everybody in action here. I also love the portrayal of the villagers, because outside of Omera, right, all of them can fight. Or, excuse me, Omera can fight. She's a badass. She can fire a blaster. She can do what she needs to survive. The rest of them just learned. They portrayed them as that, as being kind of this rambunctious group that are doing whatever they can to get by, still struggling against these dogs, not fighting properly, but still doing what they need to do to get done. They could have easily portrayed them and been like, oh, they got trained for 2 days, now they're absolute badasses. But they didn't. Kara finally taking a shot and having it step forward, and there it goes. And then Mando's music kicks in, does what he needs to do. Hell yeah. And now all the dogs are retreating. Money, money. See? Money, money. Plan worked. Plan worked. Hey, a win's a win, right? Doesn't matter how you do it, but a win's a win. Again, another beautiful shot of the village. Can't get over the cinematography. And here's what I was mentioning earlier about Tiny being allowed to be a kid, him swallowing a frog here as the other kids could just become totally grossed out by it. They actually, if I'm not mistaken, they have a pop figure of that, of him with the frog in his mouth. Mando realizing he's going to have to leave him here. Kara asking all the questions that we've all wanted to ask for the last few episodes. I remember actually thinking that there was a possibility of him leaving Tiny there, because obviously we didn't know. We didn't know what was going to happen with the character, or Mando for that matter. And back then, I remember watching the episode and thinking to myself, for most of it, this is definitely a spin-off episode, but then realizing, oh, maybe the episode, this was the point of it all. I mean, I'm glad he didn't leave Tiny there, but it was always a possibility, because Mando realizing and understanding that, like he had said, traveling with him, that's no life for a kid. There you go. O'Mara. Sorry, I'm not talking too much right now. I'm very much enjoying what's happening here. And then this shot of possibly this bounty hunter actually shooting Tiny. What is wrong with you? Just seeing the crosshairs on little Tiny's head is just disastrous. Just absolutely disastrous. And thankfully, coming to realize that Cara Dune is able to sneak up behind and pull it. Oh, thank God. Oh, poor Tiny. Poor Tiny. Again, another character development for these two, Cara and Mando. Cara saying, "Hey, you want an escort? You want a partner?" And Mando saying like, "Nah, I'm good." That wasn't Cara at the beginning of all this. And we obviously know they come back together later in the season, but okay, that one might have had a little burn to it as I finished the whole glass. But it was good. It was good. It was good. I'm not going to pour myself another glass just because I'm almost done here. I'm seriously going to have to go into this specific episode and download some music. I remember after the season, when all of the tracks became available, I went to Ludwig Göransson's page and I went absolutely mad on downloading some tracks, but I don't think I got this episode. I don't know why. Poor Tiny. Look how real and beautiful that puppet looks. And there it is. The episode ends, directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. And has this concept art goes through, which is so great looking, by the way. Very different look for the ATST, too. Just a great episode. A great episode. I like I had mentioned multiple times, I understand what people's interests and expectations lie when we got the first couple episodes, of the first season. But I think that for an episode that strayed away from the main story, or, at this point, we didn't really understand or know what the main story was, but straight away from the main story that Mando's on the run, etc. It kind of stops off this backwater town, as he mentions. And I'd said it throughout the episode, but it's the character development that is so important throughout this episode. It sets up what we know for the coming episodes, right? We're now officially halfway through the first season. It seems like at this point something new is coming for Mando if you're a first-time viewer. And so it's setting up, not knowing at the time, character thoughts, character actions, ideas that are possibly being planted for the future, such as Mando settling down and officially taking off his helmet, Tiny being off and being a kid, that type of stuff. So I'm very excited. And I know, and we all know, if you've seen it, which I hope most of us have, that only some of that, to a small portion, comes true in the first season. A lot of that is touched on, or is hopefully being touched on in the new season. So I hope that in season 2, we get a little bit more of that. I know my guess right now is that the series will probably end with Mando settling down. And I hope we see Omera again. First of all, great name. But I hope we see her again because she's a really cool character. And again, she's played by an incredibly talented actress in Julia Jones. And so as far as Sanctuary goes, episode 4, very satisfied, very happy. As far as Clyde Mays goes, even more so satisfied and happy. A very unexpected taste for this bourbon. Bourbon, when you say bourbon to someone, most of the time, for myself, I know that a lot of people think, oh, no, I don't want bourbon. Like, no, that's too much for me. That's, has too much kick, too much spice, etc. And so I'm very happy that it was, for lack of a better term, lighter. It was just smoother and more balanced. It had a very fruity sensation to it, which you don't get with a lot of bourbons. You get that with a lot of flavored whiskey. And so I was very happy and satisfied and surprised. That's a good word for today, is surprised, because it was not what I expected. And so if you ever get a chance, check out Clyde Mays. If it's at your local grocery store, or if you're into bourbon or whiskey and you want to order something online, there you go. It's right there next to me. That's the bottle. This is what the actual bottle looks like. It's the same thing, but this is just his hand. Also, I only know you mentioned it once, but beautiful coloring. Great looking color to this whiskey. And so, yeah, Clyde Mays bourbon whiskey, Alabama style, but distilled in Kentucky. So a little confusing there, but that's not that big of a deal. Episode 4, Sanctuary for the Mandalorian. We're getting into the nitty gritty here. Episode 5 is kind of another spinoff. We get into Tatooine stuff, which I'm excited to get back to because out of all of the episodes, if I'm not mistaken, it was the one I disliked the most. Not to say that I disliked it, it's just the one I disliked the most. And so I'm interested to see how I feel about it going back to it a second time. That will be next week. I have about 5 weeks until the airing of season 2, which leaves me perfect timing to wrap up season 1 and do a special preview, etc., for season 2, which I'm excited to get into. And I'm hoping to have some special guests for that one. So look out. I've met some people in recent months that have allowed the opportunity to have some cool Star Wars discussions on this show. And so look out for that. As far as this show for this episode right now, to Brandy and Ferris and to anyone watching live as well as back on the replay, thank you so much. I appreciate it for joining me. Again, I had mentioned it before, but the Whiskey Jedi is very much just a show for me to sit down and enjoy talking Star Wars and whiskey, whether it's on my own or with you guys. And rewatching this Mandalorian has been a lot of fun. It's opened up a lot of conversations. And for Brandy for recommending some whiskey in there, thank you so much. If anybody watching has recommendations, I would love your recommendations. I'd very much like to write some down and get some new ones on the show and be able to plug you guys for recommending them to me. So I appreciate that. So check out this episode or the show, every week. Mostly Thursdays. It's been Thursdays the last couple of weeks, so it's been sticking to that time. It's been a good time for me. And then also I'm available on Apple and Spotify, audio form if you're interested in that, but it's always more fun on video, so I recommend that. You can also find my personal channel at Qui-Gon Jake, Twitter, Instagram. You can find me there. 2 ends because someone else took it before me. Damn it. But for now, I am Jake Berlin, a.k.a. the Whiskey Jedi, and thank you guys so much for joining me. May the Force be with you.